So, Keith, perhaps we could kick off by telling us a little bit about what your role is in the Catapult.
So I'm the CEO of the Cell Gene Therapy Catapult, and in fact founded it in 2012. So I was the lucky recipient of £70 million and a mobile phone and the instructions to get on with it.
What attracted you to that particular role?
So I've been working in the biotech or life sciences for my entire career. And early on I worked in monoclonals and saw them come through from just an idea to the blockbuster products they are now. Helped build companies or built companies which changed the way medicine was delivered. And then I had a spell running the Scottish Blood Transfusion Service. And when I was there, I saw 2 or 3 things which had a big impact on me. Number one was in the blood service, on a daily basis, working with donors, patients, and my lovely staff, we made a difference to people's lives. And in that mix, it was really motivating to take cells from one person, give them to another. And of course, more than just blood transfusion, it was tissues, it was stem cells for transplant. And then later on, we started to branch out into other cell-based treatments, and it really piqued my kind of excitement. It got my desires going, and I thought this was the next big thing. So when I heard that the Catapult was coming along as an idea, I actually helped put together a consortium in Scotland to try to bid for it. So even before I was appointed, I was interested in it because I thought that all that work that I'd done in biotech and blood transfusion and cell-based stuff would really help me actually be at the center of growing an industry. So it was really that motivation which drove me to that point. Although I have to say, when I got the check and the mobile phone, it was a kind of, gee whiz, what next?
So clearly you're very enthusiastic for the area and the sector. You've been in charge of the Catapult for quite a long period of time now. What would you say the real achievements are of the first 5 years?
So I was reflecting on that only on the way to this conference, because actually in May 2012, when I was appointed, this was the first conference, so I had to scramble together a presentation about what the future might look like. And in that first year, did what I always do when I have a new venture to create, because it was required creating from nothing. It was really to tightly define the mission, what we were going to do, and then really try to understand what was getting in the way of the industry developing. And if you understand what's in the way, then you can construct programs to deal with those issues. So we identified a number of key things that needed addressing to kind of uncork the bottle. Because if you think of that bottle of champagne that we've got now, there was a cork on it in 2012. The first one was the regulatory environment was well-meaning but meandering, painful, difficult and long, and that put people off. The second one was manufacturing. How do you scale this process up from, scraping a few cells together in a dish to do a first-in-man study to actually being able to do thousands of patients. And lastly, the kind of business side of things, the autologous business model, the paying for cures, were all there. And of course, these things needed to get into clinical trial, and they weren't really getting into trial quickly enough or in sufficient numbers to create an industry. So I put together 3 groups, a regulatory and clinical group, a kind of a manufacturing scale group, and a business group, and got them to work on all of those things. So the first thing that really made a difference was we helped to propose and streamline the regulatory system so that now there's a one-stop shop in the UK, and it's really good and it really works, and people recognize that globally, that the UK is one of the best places to do this. The second thing I did was put together a big industrialization group to work on the technologies, and they've made some fantastic advances on developing and automating these processes. And I put together a health economics and reimbursement group, which again has changed the way that NICE looks at these therapies, and actually validated that if they're good enough, they'll get paid for. So those were great achievements, but I think that when the other two big things that we're particularly pleased about was that we identified about a year into the Catapult that actually it was all well and good doing these advances, but if any one of them was successful, there was nowhere to make it in the UK at sufficient scale. So I was really pleased to be able to persuade government to put up initially £55 million to allow me to build the lovely new manufacturing centre, which opened only a few weeks ago, opened by the Minister Greg Clark along with Sam Jima. And that's been terrific, and we have 4 firms in there already and a vibrant cluster and lots of companies going forward. The second thing that we kind of identified that was missing really was that initially we hadn't really identified the provision of viral vectors as a bottleneck for cell-based therapies to transform cells. So we put together a group and and actually recognized really that gene therapy was the coming thing, and changed our name to the Cell Gene Therapy Catapult, which was absolutely perfect. And now we have a wall of therapies which are mainly immuno-onc and gene therapies, but with a significant number of other therapies coming through. So I think if you put all that together, the proudest thing I have, or the thing I'm most pleased with, is actually the transformation of the sector. And I like to think that it probably would have gone well without us, but almost definitely it's gone faster and bigger because of us. And I think that's what motivated me for the first 5 years, and of course motivates me for the second 5 years that we're just about to enter.
And that's obviously the next question, which is how do you see the Catapult changing and shaping the challenges to meet the needs of the sector in the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, it's always great to have success as a problem. So problems are there. So some of the issues that I talked about haven't gone away, in terms of we can, keep improving the regulatory process, no doubt. We can keep working on the health economics. We've got past the initial move from to get to semi-automated processes. So we intend to work in a number of, if you like, theme areas. The big one, the one that will probably make the most difference to the overall sector is working on the supply chain and the manufacturing. Because in the long run, this web of companies that have a supply chain there are the things that are likely to anchor the industry in the UK in the long run. So actually turning our Stevenage facility into a cluster of the Formula One of cell and gene therapy is really important, and building those stuff. The next one is in the adoption space, because all this won't be of any value unless health services adopt them. And of course the advanced therapy treatment centres that, along with Innovate UK, we've helped put together, they're absolutely crucial in actually getting that bridgehead into the NHS to start doing these things and work out how they can be done, along with the reimbursement stuff. And then we're back into a couple of major areas like what we call intelligent manufacture, which goes from small-scale automation to large-scale automation, and really trying to knock the cost of goods out, but actually just make the manufacture of these things reliable, and go through the evolution that hopefully we'll go through an evolution in this in a shorter period of time than, say, it took for monoclonals, which took 20 years plus. And the last thing that we really want to work on as a big issue is what we call gene delivery systems. So that's both improving the technologies around delivering viruses to the cells, either ex vivo or in vivo, and of course there's the viruses that we have now, and we can improve the analytics for that, we can improve some of the downstream processing, we can work with fantastic companies to actually help them accelerate their processes with our Guy's facility and in Stevenage, but also in their facilities as well. But also we've kind of got an eye on the future, which is non-viral methods as well. So we've got a non-viral process because I think that potentially could give it a step change. So we started to invest in that area.
And so we've talked very much about what we've done within the UK. Looking internationally, and it's clear from this meeting that there's a lot of international things happening, what do you think we need to do to make the UK, what needs to be done to make the UK a more attractive place from an international perspective?
Well, we think it already is a highly attractive place to do it. Certainly in Europe, I think it's well recognised that it's got the best ecosystem. I think that what we need to make sure is that the next few years, as we go through Brexit, we can't ignore that, to make sure that nothing gets in the way of seamless movement of these therapies back and forward to the benefit of patients, both in the UK and in the rest of continental Europe. So we see that as a destination. We see that once you get past that kind of Brexit shock, that certainly the international firms that we talk to in Japan, China, and the US in particular are extremely interested in the UK system. So improving at the clinical end, so getting the ability to manufacture and support manufacturing, and then getting the ability to clinically deliver and get real-world clinical results is extremely attractive to firms. So I can't emphasize enough how important the initiatives that we've kicked off over the last few months are.
And one thing that ministers often harp on about is the excellent science base here. Is there something that the Catapult's doing in the skills element in the space?
So yeah, I mean the science base has been top-cited science base since since Noah was a lad. But we've managed to keep the growth of the industry going as it's gone from the cottage industry to this early industrial industry, really by taking those that were in the space, and they've mostly migrated to leadership positions. But I think the next one is we'll see more of that coming through the postdoc system and what have you, and the management system. But I think that the training initiatives that we've put in place and announced today that will support both people like manufacturing apprentices who wouldn't as a youngster want to work on actually manufacturing medicines, transformative medicines for people, and actually also the capability and skills building that we've added on to the advanced therapy treatment centres are the things that will be needed to provide that next impetus. And we know literally of a requirement for hundreds of manufacturing staff, and it'll be the same at the clinical end as well.
Thank you very much. Just before we close, I just wondered, was there anything specifically you're hoping to get out of the meeting today or over the next couple of days?
Well, I always love these meetings because it gives me the chance to do what it says on the tin, and that's meet people, but also continue to get across the message of both the Catapult story and the UK is a great place to deal with. But of course, meetings like this attract the senior people, so it's really efficient for us to have our business meetings, talk to them, and come away with new collaborations. And we certainly have a busy schedule talking to our existing collaborators and working with new ones. So we fully expect to go away with our pockets full of business cards and new leads.
Thank you very much.